Great to have us all back together after the holidays. I spent 3 weeks with my family in St. Louis, Missouri, and a quote that reminds me of the quote of the American spiritual leader Ram Dass, who said, "If you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family." Or 3 weeks, as I did. I did have a great time. My talk this morning is titled, "We Were Made for These Times." So I'd like to begin with a quote. "We have fallen upon evil times, and the world has waxed very old and wicked. Politics are very corrupt." This quote is not from a CNN commentator. This quote is an inscription from an old stone from ancient Constantinople. The year was 3800 BC. While not exactly an uplifting quote, it does give us some perspective of today's environment. So regardless of your political position, I think we can all agree we're in a bit of a turmoil. So we come here on Sundays for fellowship, for uplifting music from our musical team, thank you as always, Marie, and a weekly, as I call it, spiritual tune-up. During difficult times, our teaching can help us gain our own power. It's about us going within. It's about our greatest gift that God has given us, which is the gift of our own mind and the gift of our thoughts. We teach, and we learn this from our New Thought leaders, one of them being the founder of Unity, Charles Fillmore, and his wife. We teach that when things don't go our way, we're dramatically disappointed. The universe, the Spirit, God, is the one who brought us here and is ever present in our lives. And we teach that we are resilient and that we are always safe. A favorite quote of mine, I researched the internet on the Fillmores, and this is a handwritten note from Charles Fillmore, which I will pass around so you can see his script. It says, "Through my faith in infinite wisdom and power, I am endowed with courage to go forward and to make my own occasions." I love his terminology. So we're talking today about making our own occasions, as Charles so aptly states. So, okay, in 2016, we all know an unlikely event happened in our nation. No one predicted it. It truly happened against all odds. You know of what I speak. After 108 years of waiting, the Chicago Cubs won the series. And they won the series in a dramatic win, 8-7, 10th inning. That's overtime. Game 7, victory over the Cleveland Indians in the Cleveland Indians' home park. And the victory came after a climb back from a 3-1 series deficit to claim their first victory since 1908. So I know you know about the Cubs' victory, but did you know that their manager, Joe Maddon, is an avid meditator, and he's credited with starting meditation and yoga for the Cubs. He hired a former player called Darnell McDonald to instruct yoga and meditation, and he gave him the title of Mental Skills Coordinator. Coach Madden today and then tells his players, "I don't ask you to be perfect, I only ask you to be present." So we congratulate the Cubs on showing up, being present, giving their personal best, winning the series, obviously with a lot of help from their mind. For me, recently I was listening to a podcast from one of my spiritual leaders. I like to listen on my cell phone to podcasts. I download them for free. And one of my spiritual leaders is the Reverend down in Atlanta. He's the Reverend for the Atlanta Centers for Spiritual Living, formerly called Science of Mind. And he was reading from an essay from the female who you probably have heard of, who wrote the book Women Who Run with the Wolves, Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes. She's quite a storyteller. So he read a script from her that she wrote in an essay from 2003, and I'm going to read it. It takes about 5 minutes, so allow me to read this because her words are dramatic and powerful. So sit back, relax, close your eyes if you want, and I'm going to do my best to read from, be a storyteller using the words of Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And I'll start. My friends, do not lose heart. We were made for these times. I have heard from so many recently who are deeply and properly bewildered. They are concerned about the state of affairs in our world now. Ours is a time of almost daily astonishment and often righteous rage over the latest degradations of what matters most to civilized visionary people. You are right in your assessments. The luster and the hubris some have aspired to while endorsing acts so heinous against elders and everyday people, the poor, the unguarded, the helpless, is breathtaking. Yet I urge you, ask you, gentle you, to please not spend your spirit dry by bewailing these difficult times. Especially do not lose hope, most particularly because the fact is that we were made for these times. Yes, for years we have been learning, practicing, been in training for, and just waiting to meet on this exact plane of engagement. I grew up on the Great Lakes, and I recognize a seaworthy vessel when I see one. Regarding awakened souls, there have never been more able vessels in the waters than there are right now across the world. I'm going to read that sentence again. Regarding awakened souls, there have never been more able vessels in the waters than there are right now across the world. And they are fully provisioned, and they are able to signal one another as never before in the history of mankind. Look out over the prow. There's millions of boats of righteous souls on the waters with you. Even though your veneers may shiver from every wave in the stormy roll, I assure you that the long timbers composing your brow and rudder come from a greater forest. That long-grained lumber is known to withstand storms, to hold together, to hold its own, and to advance regardless. In any dark time, there's a tendency to veer towards fainting over how much is wrong or unmended in the world. Do not focus on that. There's a tendency to fall into being weakened by dwelling on what is outside your reach, but what cannot yet be. Do not focus there. That is spending the wind without raising the sails. Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist another portion of this poor suffering world, will help immensely. Again, I read that sentence. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor suffering world, will help immensely. It is not given to us to know which acts or by whom will cause the critical mass to tip toward an enduring good. What is needed for dramatic change is an accumulation of acts, adding to, more and more continuing. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small, determined group who will not give up during the first, the second, or the 100th gale. One of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. There will always be times you feel discouraged. I too have felt despair many times in my life, but I do not keep a chair for it. I will not entertain it. It is not allowed to eat from my plate. The reason is this. In my uttermost bones, I know something as you do. It is that there can be no despair when you remember why you came to earth, who to serve, and who sent you here. The good words we say and the good words we do are not ours. They are the words and the deeds of the one or the whole who brought us here. And in that spirit, I hope you will write on your wall, when a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe. There can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for. Close. Amen. So you can understand why when I heard that read by my reverend, I said, this is a talk we all need to listen to. I made a copy. It's very easy to download. It's right by Garnet, and you can pass it around. It's on the website, and it is so powerful. It's really hard for me to speak much after I say it, so I'm not going to speak much. I'm going to ask you to speak, actually. So I've kind of designed this to ask you to share some of your thoughts. I'm going to share some of my thoughts, and then I'm going to open it up to the floor and just have us share, because I think that's what we need to do as we go through turbulent times. Incidentally, I did grow up on the Great Lakes. I grew up on Lake Erie. It was right down the road, 1/10 of a mile from the Great Lake. I take much from this essay. I mean, she's a gifted writer. What I take, and I'm going to ask you, so be thinking, I'm going to ask you to speak, what you're taking. So I thought about it, and I thought, well, I take that we are resilient. And I love the phrase, we are made of the long timbers from a greater forest. It's powerful. I take that we need to take right action, because as Clarissa says, one of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul.